live. Good morning, welcome to Morning Outlook. This is Kim speaking on Wednesday the 3rd of April. So let's start looking at news first. Yesterday there was some positive data we saw there with the UK final PMI coming out there. Came out fractionally higher than expected. Turned in the manufacturing turned into a plus figure. Anyway, it's in the scale of importance, it's actually quite a bit less than it shows here. Mortgages, etc. There was a bit of a surprise. There's a few surprises there, but nothing that is significant on the markets at the moment. We had the US JOLTS job openings higher than expected, slightly there, and factory orders improving slightly. These are numbers that are not high ranked, although anything jobs wise this week, because we've got non-farm payrolls on Friday, gives the markets the heebie-jeebies, but it didn't really give it much of a reaction actually to that. If you look at what happened at 2 o'clock when the data came out, the US dollar barely moved, even with the factory orders that are sitting there as well. Both positive numbers. The dollar, you'd expected it would have gone very strong. Well, didn't particularly. Speakers, Mester spoke in the afternoon there. He was quite hawkish in terms of holding on to prices, although rates. So wasn't probably what a lot of people wanted to see yesterday. Today, well, just looking through, we've got the European core flash estimates there at 10 o'clock. It's a lower, because we get all the individual data beforehand, the individual countries, it doesn't tend to have such an impact. We got the ADP at 115. That wherever it is, I don't know what it's got, 12:15 here. It should be 1:15. The time's wrong on here. I just noticed it's at 1:15. The clocks have moved back now. The services, that'll be 3 o'clock. That is final services, I believe. It is final services. That's an important number, but it's the flash services that really kicks the markets off there. Anyway, we've got Fed Chair speaking at 5:10. It's just due to speak at Stanford Business, the Government of Society Forum. He might say something there. It's whether or not he actually speaks on rates, etc. We've got the other speakers out there. I'm sure they're going to be speaking about rates a bit more. So there's a possible volatility when they're speaking. Australian composite PMI later. Again, we've seen the flash data out beforehand. Right. So there is some data. It might create a bit of volatility, but not expecting too much. So what about the markets then and technicals? Well, the euro continued on its downside yesterday for a short while at least, made new low, but then it gradually 10 o'clock we got the turn into 10 o'clock. We got this monthly pivot. I'm still waiting, and I will actually put the indicator on the monthly pivot. The general picture here for the euros to the short side, to me, lower highs, lower lows, still kicking through on this 4-hourly bigger swing picture. Short term there yesterday, it did come through the pivot, broke the pivot and rallied through. Didn't get any real reaction to it. Got an almost reaction to it there at 1 o'clock, but it never followed through. There was a lot of that yesterday. I saw setups occur on a couple of markets I follow, and just didn't happen. The pound is following, and today the euro, well, as I said, I'd like it to really just continue through, would be ideal. A breakdown of today's pivot, break below the 50 MA, etc. Could be a bit more interesting, a continuation if it doesn't get to the weekly. The pound still, I was looking at sentiment yesterday. The pound sentiment is soft. Seeing this through, no real changes in that respect. little bounce yesterday. Today it's come. The thing with the pound, it's already got its weekly pivot. It's not of interest to me from that point of view. It's ran down. It's hit its S2. Bound to get a bit. I say bound to. Is most likely to get a support aspect off of that. However, we could get a breakdown further, but I've got nothing on that at the moment. If it could work its way around, change direction, but it's not for me this morning. The dollar yen is a risk. It sits there around these highs. Is it going to break the highs? Well, it could do. The more it holds on there, the more chance it's got to break. If it breaks, what's going to happen? It's more likely the central bank, the Bank of Japan, might start intervening at that stage more significantly. There was chatter about it last week, was enough to give us a reasonable move to the downside, but there was no follow through. I think it was more chatter than action. But if we saw some proper action, well, we could see quite a correction. But at the moment, as I say, it's not going far. I would like to be long on it if it was just pure technical, no intervention. But I don't. It's just not worth the risk. You just sort of get into a trade, looks perfectly good technically, and then it's spoiled. So it's best left on that basis. Aussie dollar still to me looks soft on the bigger picture here, lower highs through, although yesterday, of course, like everything else, we saw the bounce kick through here from its S1. It's done weekly wise, it's done its pivot and everything. Already broke the pivot. I'm not really interested in it around here. It could come off again. It would maybe shape up. It maybe look at the lower time frame here. There'll be some divergence over the highs here. A breakdown below the daily pivot would be more interesting, but it's choking at the moment a little bit, a bit more hanging in there, as is a lot of these markets. The US dollar CAD, it's on the road to nowhere. It's trending sideways basically, and it's quite choppy when you look at it on lower time frames. Individually, it's not tradable. You've got to look at some of the crosses to see where the potential is. New Zealand dollar spent last month, most of last month on its right to downside. It's hanging in there. It had already hit the weekly pivot and the S1, so it's taken away one of my favourite trades, which is the pivot down to the S1 in trend. But excuse me, we'll see what happens. What we're seeing on the shorter time frame is a higher low here at the moment, so until we get some structural change back to the downside, for now it's of no interest. Dollar Swissy continue to push up here. The potential looks half decent. In fact, it's continuing to push quite solidly up there. I'm just looking, it has gone into double top territory on this shorter time frame. Higher lows been confirmed as it's done it again. Whether it will just consolidate now is another matter. I was looking at this against the yen actually, and it's a possibility we could see the downside on this against the yen. The Swissy is around about the weakest. The yen is also weak, but there is a potential that either of them could be manipulated, because unfortunately both banks tend to go into that sort of they're more likely to intervene in the value, and my concern is the Swiss franc would get so soft that the Reserve Bank of Australia, the Swiss National Bank, will take action. So, but to me, I'm looking at the downside here, thinking, well, it could be a bit more of a ride to the downside. The risk then of the Japanese aspect, the yen aspect, if there was any intervention, would only improve the trade. So it's a possibility. Anyway, I'll leave that with you and see if you can find a good technical entry. Right, I shall leave that there. Let's just have a quick look at the indices. And well, before we do that, let's have a look at gold. As expected yesterday, gold continued pushing to the upside here with this with the bombing of the Syrian embassy, the Iranian embassy in Syria. It's left this uncertainty into the markets. Gold benefits generally from this sort of fear as well as the US dollar normally. But gold's hanging in there at the moment. It is coming into resistance points, into its R2 here. I'm just looking through R2 in the weeklies. Maybe it's a bit stretched, but I wouldn't want to be shorting it. So it's a typical don't like to get into longs at the moment. Would like a retrace to get into it if anything. Oil, we do have OPEC meetings, I believe today, all day today, so that could well affect oil here. I should hardly think they're going to be talking about pumping more oil at the moment, but the market's got the heebie-jeebies with the situation with Israel and Iran, so that's going to not help in terms of and put more pressure on upward pricing for oil for now. So it's pushing back up there towards the we're sitting at around the $85 on my system here. It's pushing up. Is it going to push all the way up to 100? Possibly. It's certainly a price level that the OPEC members would love to see it at. Anyway, there we go. Solid move on that. S&Ps coming off there again yesterday. So we've seen the S&Ps coming down to the monthly pivot there at the moment, sitting around the monthly pivot. A break of these highs, this intermediate high here, I say, would give us a higher low on this and give us structurally a better move. So some potential. It certainly didn't come through yesterday. It sold off most of the afternoon there. Continued through from the previous mark there. Now, I know a lot of people want to be short in this market, and I'm sure there's scope to the downside, but the risk to me is just too much. In fact, a break above the highs here would be more positive. So if we get any of the speakers that are a little bit more dovish later on, watch for the break. That is the same move as I'm looking for. I looked at it on the 4 hourly, the break of the high there, but make sure it's above the pivot, just in case it just runs into the pivot and stalls. That would be a much more positive move for potentially more upside there. We are going to get these sort of retracements, and yep, there's certainly some intraday potential on some of these, but I just say tread carefully if you're going counter market. Okay, I was just looking at Nasdaq, same sort of in terms of the price action there. That will be similar. The DAX, well, the DAX yesterday got a retracement properly to its monthly pivot, seeing a little bit of bounce off that at the moment. There we go. Is it going to continue to the upside there? Certainly looking a bit more positive. It's taken out the lower high. Arguably it's moving back to the upside there. Again, there is the risk that it could run into its weekly pivot and stall and roll, but otherwise if you can break through that, and if the US markets oblige and join in, that'd be a bit more interesting. The FTSE here, again, no surprise, there's divergences over the high there yesterday into the spike on the lower time frames in particularly. Seeing a bit of a correction, but again we've got support where we sit into the 50 at the moment, 4 hourly 50, giving a bit of support on my charts here anyway. Again, it has put lower highs in both this year, the DAX and the FTSE, given these lower highs in. They've yet to give a higher low the other direction, and it would probably be safer waiting until they do. Certainly they want to be above their daily pivots for the long side continuation, otherwise we could just be seeing a bigger correction here. And of course watch for what the US markets are continuing to do. This does look a bit soft at the moment as the cash market's opened. Right, that's pretty much it for me here. I'll leave you to it, and I'll catch you tomorrow morning. Take care. Bye for now.